Welcome into the arena. Grab yourself a seat and join me courtside as we talk your Miami Heat. Welcome on into another edition of Miami Heat Basketball Beat. I'm your host, Michael Furley, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you into the show today. All right, guys, we have the offseason fast approaching here as we move along into the 25-26 NBA season. But before we can look ahead, we must look back as we are going to do our report cards, if you will, for last year's season. I know it was hard. I know it hurt. And we have to just face the truths and see if we have to go to summer school or if we're going to stay back a grade. All right, guys, later in this series here, we're going to go over some players, our star players, our Adebayos and Tyler Heroes, our role players like our Alec Burks and Josh Richardson and Kyle Anderson after the trade. We'll do some of our young players and, of course, our coach, Eric Spoelstra. But before we do that, we're going to get in and we're going to grade our front office. And this one hurts me a lot. I don't know if I should give the grade right away or just talk about what we think the front office is here to do. All right. First of all, you have to keep in mind the front office's desires and plans don't always match those of the fans. So there's been many times where we think they're not going for it or improving their team, but they spin it and say, we're doing this responsibly. But you look at their actions and at least you can find a way to make it make sense. They're saving money here so they can spend money somewhere else. And some of that has to do with this luxury tax. Getting into the luxury tax in and of itself is not bad, but it's the repeater tax. If you're in it for 3 out of 4 years, those tax dollars become threefold, if not fivefold, depending on how much over the tax you are. And the Heat is notoriously great at being under the luxury tax. They might go over it 1 year, but then they'll spend 2 to 3 years below it, resetting that repeater tax penalty payment. This time, however, you'd be surprised to know that they were under the tax in all 3 or 4 years that Jimmy Butler was here prior to not this past season, but the year before. So they went to the NBA Finals twice. In both of those years, they were not over the luxury tax. They went over the luxury tax in 23-24, and then last year they went over the luxury tax, which means if they're over the luxury tax, one of the next 2 years, they are going to be in that repeater tax. Now, you might say to yourselves, I don't care what the owner pays. It's his, they're rich, they're billionaires, they can afford it. I don't disagree in theory here, but keep in mind the owners do care, and they're not going to spend the money if they're going to get charged penalties. So as much as you can be like, just spend the money, I don't care. It's their money, and they do care. And if we're rooting for a team that we don't have the power to make these decisions, we want them to be able to make better decisions in the future. It stinks. There's 2 tracks. We want to get good now, but we want to be able to avoid penalties as we do it. They've been in the tax the last 2 years while being an 8 seed and being bounced in the first round of the playoffs. All right, so before we get into their grade, let's find out a little bit what they're actually trying to accomplish here. All right, so last year, the 2024-25 season, the salary here, there's different levels here when it comes to the salary cap. If you look at this sheet right here, we have the top of the list here, the second apron. That's $188.7 million. Again, we're rounding these numbers a little bit here. The NBA's first apron is $178.1 million. The NBA luxury tax line, which is the most important line to the Miami Heat anyway, and their ownership, is $170.8 million. While that salary cap is $140.6 and the salary floor is $126.5. So you have to spend $126.5 on your total team roster. You can only go over the salary cap with signing players that are already on your team, bird rights and or exceptions and or minimum contracts. But if you have enough of that gets you over that luxury tax line of $170.8 million, then you'll have to pay a penalty. If you're under that line, you actually get paid what the other taxpayers' penalties, what they pay. So not only do you not pay a penalty if you're under the line, you get paid extra money for being responsible enough to stay under that line. And that's why the Heat, 3 out of 5 years on average, if not more, are always under that line. And by doing so in a cyclical manner, you keep yourselves from not paying 3 times, 4 times, 5-fold per dollar over the luxury tax. Now, when it comes to these aprons, first apron and second apron, these are new lines of demarcation in the last CBA, and they have different penalties. Some of it might be higher tax penalties, but mostly they actually give you operational obstructions. For example, like if you're in the second apron for, I forget if it's 3 years in a row, you will lose a first round pick. If you're over the second apron, you can't bring in more money than you trade out. The first apron has similar restrictions, but there's a tier-based thing there. First apron's not that bad, but it are restrictions. Second apron is bad when it comes to trades, not money. We don't care what these guys spending money. They're billionaires, but they can't make moves if they're restricted from how they can do business. So again, the Heat try to stay really close to that luxury tax line, and almost every year they get under it by the trade deadline. You might not even realize. You're like, oh, they made a trade for this guy. They lost that guy. I like how that makes our team better. They're not worried about making the team better. They want the team good enough so you keep your interest while they stay under that tax line. And every once in a while, when they can't help it, they'll go over. But their goal as a front office is to be under that tax line. All right. Now, before we get to the grade, let's see how they did last year in terms of where they were in these demarcation lines here. So heading into last year, with the roster they had after they signed everybody, they were at 187.6 million. You can see right here. Let me just put the little mouse there. I don't want to have that on there too much. 187.6 million. They were over the first apron, just under the second apron, which means they were very limited on the types of moves they could do, but they still had a little wiggle room. All right, so after sending out these trades, remember they traded Thomas Bryant for nothing. It was a second round swap, so no salary came in. So they got rid of 2.8 million. They sent out Jimmy Butler and sent out Josh Richardson. And if you recall, as that trade went through, it was changing and morphing through the night. Remember we thought we had PJ Tucker? Well, I'm going to show you what the Heat tried to do and what they failed to do in the end. If you go to the bottom of this thing here, this is the trade that they wanted. They were going to send out Jimmy Butler, Josh Richardson, after already sending out Thomas Bryant. They were going to bring in PJ Tucker. Remember, we thought we were going to PJ Tucker back, and for the Fields, that was going to be good vibes. And Andrew Wiggins, and that was going to put them at 170 million. They were going to get below the tax line. Pardon me there, guys. And that was their main goal. They knew they weren't winning a championship last year. They wanted to reset that luxury tax clock so they would not be in the repeater tax. And guess what? At the last minute, when they were going to try and send off Kyle Anderson to Toronto changed their mind as they were making moves to get Brandon Ingram, and they were trying to keep themselves under the tax line as well. So instead of acquiring PJ Tucker and Andrew Wiggins for Jimmy Butler and Josh Richardson, we ended up acquiring Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and Davion Mitchell for Butler and Richardson as we sent Tucker to the Toronto Raptors. And what that did, that put us at 173.7 million on our salary sheet for the end of 24-25, which good. It got us under the first apron. That's all fine and good. We have less penalties and more flexibility in terms of the roster moves we can make. But don't forget, our ownership has self-imposed restrictions due to that luxury tax line. We did not get under it. They had the perfect trade. They were going to get under it by just a little bit by bringing in PJ Tucker and Wiggins and sending off Kyle Anderson to the Toronto Raptors. But instead, the Raptors went for that Brandon Ingram trade, and they needed different pieces. So they sent off Davion Mitchell. And to get us a little bit under, instead of sending them Kyle Anderson, because then we still would have been over the first apron, we sent them PJ Tucker, who had $3 million more. So that got us from over the apron to under the apron. But because of the Brandon Ingram trade and us not, and the Heat being in a place of desperation, remember, everyone knew they had to trade Jimmy Butler. And if all the ownership groups out there know the Heat want to get under the luxury tax line. So the Heat are not in a position of power in any of these moves, no matter how much they talk to you. Listen, I'm a Heat fan. I love the Heat front office, generally speaking, but this year they dropped the ball. They got played. They missed their targets. They failed in more than one way this time around. Yes, losing Jimmy Butler is awful. I don't disagree. I love Jimmy Butler as a player, especially on the Heat, but he wanted to go. It was time to send him off. But if you're going to do that, you have to hit your other goals, and they did not. They did not hit their goals. And because of that, they're going to be under the luxury tax this coming year, 25-26. But that means they have to be under it again in 26-27, or they're going to keep that repeater tax going. That's going to be 3 out of 4 years because they were over it 2 years ago, they were over it this past season. Even if they're under it this year, but over it next year when we think they're going to get the big whales in free agency, they're going to be in the repeater tax. The Heat do not want to do that, which means they're setting us up for failure for the next 2 years unless they can somehow. Remember, they brought Jimmy Butler in and they stayed under the tax line. So maybe they can bring in better talent and stay in the line, but they're going to do it the next 2 years. I'm sorry to tell you guys, no matter what you think, they are not going over that tax line in the next 2 seasons. Now, the good thing is the salary cap continues to grow, so that tax line will be up. So there is room to fit some guys in under that line. They can maybe stay there 2 years in a row. But I'm telling you right now, when next summer, when they set the tax line, the Heat are not going over it no matter what. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind, you only have to be under it by the end of the season. So they might make a move to go over it. Like last year, we started off 16 million over or 17 million over, and we finished only 3 million over because you can make moves throughout the season. It's where you finish the season at, not where you start it. So even if they bring in talent to go over that tax line to start the 26-27 season, be assured they're going to be trading away money without bringing some back during that year. Just the hard truths, guys. So grading the front office here, one, it was a tough year getting rid of their best player in Jimmy Butler, but we understand that was a two-way street, or at least Jimmy Butler wanted to go. What can you do with that? You can't blame the front office for a player wanting to leave, but we can blame them for not reaching their goals, especially when not reaching their goals sets them back for years to come. We're fans. We want them to go for it. We want to have the most flexibility, not because we care about their wallets, but because they care about their wallets, and they're not going to do for us unless their wallets are straight. This is not a commentary on civilization and society in America, but maybe it is. The billionaires, the millionaires, however you want to classify them, they do control our happiness more than you realize, and it's I don't think it's right on an ethical standard here. But if they don't, but they can they're not going to make us happy unless they hit their quotas and their numbers, and they didn't do it this time, which means you're going to have to do it a year in the future. So that being said, guys, I give the Miami Heat front office a D-. I wanted to give them an F, but I will not do that. I'll give them a D- because they did get under the first apron, but they failed to get under that luxury tax line, which is why they're not going for players like Kevin Durant this offseason, and they're going to stay under that tax line no matter what. Haven't looked up the 25-26 tax line yet. I don't think it's been officially stated because there's going to be a moratorium in the first week of July. So those numbers are estimates as of the moment. When we get those final numbers here, I will let you know. But be assured the Miami Heat will be under that tax this year no matter what. And because they didn't hit it last year, they're going to be under the tax next year, 26-27. Ouch, ouch, ouch. This last year failure is going to cost us 2 years of hope in terms of a championship run unless they can get the most efficient in terms of salary for production, which they have done in the past, but it's hard to do it over and over again in today's NBA. All right, guys, join us next time when we do some more report cards on some players and coaches. But this year, the 24-25 Miami Heat front office gets a D-. With that being said, guys, thanks for joining me. Go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff, so you can get all of our updates as they come on out. With that being said, guys, may you please make your free throws. Well, what I used to say, I don't even remember. May your challenges be successful. May you please make your free throws, and we will see you next time.